1985, a boy was born in Madeira, a small, isolated island in Portugal. His home was a tiny, tin-roof shack, and both of his parents were extremely poor. In fact, money was so tight that he almost never existed. His mother initially considered terminating her pregnancy with him because they simply couldn't afford another mouth to feed. That kid grew up to be Cristiano Ronaldo. He built a global branded empire, and his humbling come-up story had a huge part to play with that. Today, we're looking at some individuals and founders who built extraordinary brands, what it took for them to reach their success, and even share some lessons taken directly from some of the greats so that you can build your very own legacy. Despite an already troubling start, Ronaldo grew up with his alcoholic father, who was also a hitman, someone who assists in pumping up soccer balls. This allowed the boy to grow up with soccer being a huge part of his childhood. But something was different with him. He had an unnatural amount of competitiveness at a very young age. It was almost obsessive. He was quickly recognized as a prodigy. This attention gave Ronaldo the opportunity to leave his home at just 12 years old to play at a sports academy. Some kids thought this was the dream, but for Ronaldo, it was a nightmare. He lived in a tight dormitory, cried every single day from homesickness, and was mercilessly bullied by the city kids because of his thick island accent. And at age 14, he hit his breaking point. A teacher mocked his accent and his family's poverty. Infuriated, Ronaldo threw a chair at the teacher and was promptly expelled. With his mother's permission, he dropped out of school entirely to bet his life on soccer. But unfortunately, the trouble didn't stop there. At age 15, just as his career looked possible, he was diagnosed with tachycardia, a racing heart condition that could have legally banned him from playing sports or cause sudden death. He underwent risky laser heart surgery to correct his cardiac pathways. Within days of surgery, he was back on the pitch training. When Ronaldo turned 18 years old, he played a friendly match against Manchester United. He performed so well that the legendary United players literally begged their manager, Sir Alex Ferguson, to sign him before they left the stadium. United bought him days later. Thus, the legend of CR7 was born. 5 Ballon d'Or, 5 Champions League crowns, and an unprecedented empire of over 900 career goals. He was crowned the King of Europe. But this was only the start of what would become the extraordinary brand of CR7. In the 2006 World Cup, Portugal went against England in what would be a highly anticipated matchup. Just 2 years prior at Euro 2004, Portugal and England played an all-time classic quarterfinal, ending in a heartbreaking penalty shootout win for Portugal. The 2006 World Cup rematch was globally built up as England's ultimate chance for revenge. But it doesn't stop there. Ronaldo would be facing his old teammate Wayne Rooney, who played with him on Manchester United when he was signed at 18 years old. This was going to be more than just an elimination game. It was a clash of two highly prospected players and fans. It was Ronaldo's first taste at rivalry, and let's just say, the game lived up to the hype.
Da equipa, avançado também muito difícil de parar, muito forte.
Rooney. I think Rooney accidentally stood on his opponent. He's pushing his own teammate here, and this is not good because Rooney's being called to the referee. England hold their breath. What colour is his card? He's off! Oh! England have lost their most potent weapon, Wayne Rooney.
In the beginning of the second half, Wayne Rooney stepped on the groin of Ricardo Carvalho. Ronaldo immediately went to the ref to challenge the play and demanded a red card be given to Rooney. This meant he would be expelled from the game and England would be left with just 10 men. What happened next completely shifted CR7's brand entirely.
I would never say they got him sent off. I think if you leave yourself open like that, you're going to be in trouble.
Ronaldo not only got his former teammate thrown out of a crucial game, but then gave a sly wink at the Portugal bench. The entire nation of England hated him overnight. He faced death threats, boos at every stadium, and immense media backlash. He officially became a villain. Most young athletes break under that kind of hatred. Ronaldo used it as fuel. He spent the summer lifting weights, turning from a skinny, scrawny teenager into an absolute physical specimen. He returned to England, ignored the boos, and led Manchester United to 3 straight league titles and his first world championship in 2008. His greatness continued through the years with a future rivalry with Lionel Messi, closing in on almost 1,000 career goals and still dominating to this day. Ronaldo's story is a factor of pure determination, competitiveness, and absolute drive for success. His brand was built on a statistically impossible come-up. He built a legacy. His story is what set the foundation for CR7 to stand alone at the absolute peak of global culture. We learned that being an underdog in your story, rising up against seemingly impossible challenges, and facing rivals throughout your career builds legacy. It's what builds extraordinary brands. But no story shows rivaling brands like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. Before CR7 had Lionel Messi to push him into the stratosphere, the entire modern digital landscape was built by 2 young dropouts who turned a personal grudge into an empire. This is the story of Apple versus Microsoft. A story of how a rivalry actually produced brands so extraordinary, it revolutionized the world. 1955 was a big year in history. There was the opening of Disneyland, the Rosa Parks protests, and 2 of the world's future tech giant founders were born. Interestingly enough, these 2 were born in the same year, but at completely opposite ends of the social classes. Steve Jobs, the future co-founder of Apple, was born to unwed college students. Jobs was immediately given up for adoption and was raised by a blue-collar mechanist and a housewife in what would become Silicon Valley. Jobs grew up feeling abandoned but unique. He wasn't a tech prodigy, he was a counterculture rebel, fascinated by Eastern mysticism, psychedelic drugs, and calligraphy. Gates, on the other hand, was born in Seattle, an immense privilege. His father was a prominent corporate lawyer, and his mother was a wealthy banking executive. Despite growing up in a very lavish lifestyle, Gates was an intense, hyper-competitive math genius. At his elite private school, he and his friend Paul Allen discovered an early computer terminal. Gates was so obsessed that he would sneak out of his house at 3 a.m. to use the machine, often falling asleep at the keyboard. Their childhoods could not be any more different, yet parallels in their come-ups would begin to appear sooner than they had expected. Steve Jobs teamed up with a quiet, actual engineering genius named Steve Wozniak. Working out of Jobs' parents' garage, Wozniak built the Apple I and Apple II. Jobs didn't build these circuits. He was actually the master marketer. He convinced the world that a computer shouldn't just belong in a government bunker. It belonged on your kitchen counter. By age 25, the Apple IPO made Jobs worth over $100 million. Going back to Bill Gates, he breezed into Harvard University. But when the world's first microcomputer kit, the Altair 8800, hit the market in 1975, Gates realized the hardware was useless without the software. He dropped out of Harvard to seize the moment, founding Microsoft. He worked tirelessly building the code for the future software of the new generation computers. To put it simply, Jobs worked on the physical machines themselves, the hardware, while Gates saw the potential in building the code that told the computers how to think, the software. But here's where the story gets interesting, because before these 2 founders were rivals, they actually teamed up. Jobs was building a revolutionary new computer called the Macintosh. To make it useful, he needed software like spreadsheets and word processors. So he recruited the young software developer Bill Gates to write code for the Mac. So then how did these 2 eventually split apart and create their own tech giants? At this point in time, they needed each other to succeed. Jobs had a cool product with weak functionality, and Gates had a weak-looking product with excellent functionality. They would have dominated together, but it all started with an event that changed everything. It was called the Xerox House Break-In. In the late 70s, Xerox invented the graphical user interface, or a GUI. The visual concept of using a mouse to click on desktop icons and folders rather than typing raw lines of text code. Xerox executives didn't understand what they had, but Steve Jobs saw it and immediately copied the concept for his Macintosh. While Gates' team was working inside Apple developing Mac software, they also saw how beautiful this graphical interface was. Gates quietly realized that whoever owned the visual operating system would own the world. And right before the Macintosh launched, Microsoft shook the industry by announcing Windows 1.0, their own visual operating system featuring mouse controls and icons. Steve Jobs went absolutely ballistic. He called Gates into a room surrounded by Apple employees and screamed, "You're ripping us off. I trusted you and now you're stealing from us." Bill Gates stood there completely unfazed and delivered one of the most famous, cold-blooded lines in tech history. "Well, Steve, I think there's more than one way of looking at it. I think it's more like we both had this rich neighbor named Xerox, and I broke into his house to steal the TV set and found out that you had already stolen it." And just like that, this corporate betrayal had split the tech industry in half. This is what formed the brand identities we know today. Apple has the clean, premium hardware, and Microsoft has the functional, performance-based software. Their story is a masterclass at what rivalries can produce. They force legacies to be built, timelines to be rewritten, and brands that are recognizable on a global scale. Think about the patterns here. A boy from a tin roof shack in Portugal becomes the most followed human being on earth. An adopted college dropout beats a multi-billion-dollar monopoly to create the iPhone. These aren't just stories about sports or technology. These are blueprints. Whether you are a startup founder trying to disrupt an industry, an entrepreneur trying to get your first high-ticket clients, or simply someone trying to build a personal brand that outlives you, the rules of building an extraordinary brand are exactly the same. If you want to build a real legacy, you have to master 3 fundamental shifts. First, most new founders make the mistake of trying to make everyone like them. They write safe, boring content and build vanilla brands. When the world turned on Ronaldo in 2006, he didn't apologize or try to fit in. He leaned into being the hyper-disciplined, cold-blooded machine. Apple did the exact same thing when Windows dominated the corporate world. They didn't try to build a better spreadsheet. They made commercials mocking business suits and told the world their products were for the misfits and rebels. If your brand tries to speak to everyone, it speaks to no one. Stop trying to be liked by the masses. Define your exact point of view, stand firmly behind your premium standards, and let the wrong clients filter themselves out. A strong brand is a magnet. It attracts your tribe, but it must repel the rest. The second shift is understanding identity versus infrastructure. Apple and Ronaldo both had one thing in common. They mastered identity. They developed emotional storytelling and premium positioning. This matters. It's the reason as to why people fell in love with them. It's what gave their brands weight. Bill Gates, on the other hand, had mastered infrastructure. He built scale, consistency, distribution, and automated workflows. It was why his brand survived and delivered every single day. You as a person, as a founder, an entrepreneur, an athlete, a brand, no matter what, you have to build and play into both parts. If you have powerful brand identity but lack the infrastructure to allow your brand to thrive, you will crash just as Apple did in 1985. But if you have a weak brand identity but powerful product infrastructure, you will struggle to gain trust and grow. You cannot scale a business if you are manually doing everything yourself. You need an automated system that distributes your story, captures attention, and maintains a luxury aesthetic while you sleep. And ForgeOS can help with that. This is a system that handles all creative marketing for founders and entrepreneurs. We take care of the online brand building so you can continue working on your business. We are actually opening up applications for this new operating system today. If that sounds of interest to you, you can sign up for free with the first link in the description. The third and final shift is understanding the advantage of having a rival and competition. Your brand is invisible until it is put next to an alternative. Ronaldo had Messi. Apple had Microsoft. The contrast is what gave their audiences clarity on who to root for. Don't hide from your competition, use them as a mirror. Clearly articulate what the industry standard is doing wrong, and show why your system is the definitive solution to that problem. Building an extraordinary brand is possible for each and every one of you watching, and if you take the lessons shared in this video, I have no doubt your legacy will be built sooner than expected. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like this video and subscribe. And again, if you want creative marketing for your business, please be sure to check out the first link in the description. Thank you for watching.